Well, welcome everyone. This is Speedrunning 102. Was anybody here last year when I did my panel Speedrunning 101? Awesome. Good people. Awesome.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. And this panel is going to be similar to last year's, like beginning of it. We talked about some of the intro to speedrunning. And then we'll get a little bit more into some of the more specialized things with speedrunning as far as the categories and systems and types of runs and the like. So anyway, my name is Cornshaq. I've been a YouTuber for over 9 years now and a Twitch streamer for going on 3, as well as I currently still, I think, hold an okay amount of world records at this point. You can go ahead and start the speed runs. Oh, I guess I should. Make sure that everyone downloads the guidebook and fill out the feedback section because they're going to be using that to improve Magfest. Which I don't know how they're going to prove. They already got me here, right? So, there, that joke, yeah, that joke. On the screen, we're going to have some of my speed runs. They're not all world record ones. I wanted to change it up. Last year I showed a bunch of speed runs, so I changed it up. It's different ones this year. So if you saw it last year, a little bit different. But anyway, speed running, if you're unfamiliar with it, is the act of course, beating a game pretty quickly. I've been doing this now a couple of years on Twitch as like part of my stream, though I don't speedrun every day. There are some people out there that speedrun every single day, all day long, mastering these games. It's amazing how much speedrunning has grown as a community. With the events like AGDQ, All Games on Twitch, which is coming up soon, next week. And there's the Summer Games on Twitch, and there's events in Europe, and speedrunning has become huge. It's something that a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, like it was a very underground thing. I was getting a part of Speed Demos Archive, was kind of the only site that kind of covered speedrunning at all. And submitting a speedrun and getting it out there for people to see was something that was really hard to do. Whereas now, you can just click go live on Twitch or go live on YouTube or whatever, and people will be watching you speedrun. Whether it's a good speedrun, bad speedrun, no matter what game it is, you can broadcast that now out to everyone, which is something that has brought speedrunning to a form that it really wasn't. Growing up, I always used speedrunning as a way to extend my life of games. Because I only got a handful of games every year, your birthday, Christmas, and the like. So I use speedrunning as a way to get more out of games I already knew and loved. And that's the thing I kind of want to emphasize when it comes to speedrunning and getting into speedrunning and thinking about doing it, is the
Real quick, do you want to start with the speedrun?
yeah, I thought you were.
I wasn't sure because you were like just talking about. All right, sorry.
I'm just talking about it. This is Muddy Final Flight. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it. It's a relatively obscure NES game, and I played with Mike Hacker. And it's not world record, it's like 3rd or 4th right now on speedrun for it, but it's a fun, entertaining one, so I want to make it. Anyway, but the thing I want to heavily emphasize when it comes to speedrunning is doing it for the fun and love of the game. Because you're not going to go right away and get a world record in one of the really huge games on your very first go. You're not going to boot up Ocarina of Time or Super Mario 64 or whatever the big current popular speedrun game is to do, and immediately be able to get that world record. Pull off those amazing, crazy glitches like getting a bottle in the Deku tree of Ocarina and then instantly warping the Ganon's Tower. That kind of stuff takes a lot of time and practice to get to that point. The point here, though, for this panel is really to kind of introduce you to why I love speedrunning and why you maybe want to try it. And like I said, that's why I kind of got into it myself, was extending the life of games. I play a lot of obscure stuff. You can speedrun anything, which is what's amazing about doing speedruns. Yes, there's these Super Marios and Super Metroids and all that, but there's also crazy, weird, obscure games. My game that I'm most well known for is a game called 8 Eyes. It's a game for NES that most probably no one has ever heard of 8 Eyes. Anybody? A little bit. That's a game I'm known for speedrunning. I've set the world record multiple times, competing against one other person. That's it. It's just me and him are the only two in the world that have gone after a record, because it's a very obscure game. But there's also crazy, stupid speedruns like Barney's Hide and Seek, or Crystal's Ponytails, or whatever it may be. And you don't have to speedrun what you think is going to be popular or what you think people are going to be interested in seeing. Just speedrun whatever you feel like. Set a crazy record in a game that you could do something like going in the Ocarina of Time and seeing how fast you're able to beat maybe a certain boss without getting hit, or using maybe a certain boss with a certain weapon, or doing whatever. Because the key to speedrunning is loving it and creating your own ideas towards it. Doesn't necessarily have to do with trying to get the fame and glory of getting on HB2 or getting on speedrun.com and trying to get that top record. When you're introducing yourself to speedrunning, what I highly recommend doing is pick a game that you already know, that you're already interested in potentially learning more about, and start to play. Just play it through without really, going all out and trying to pull up crazy glitches. Don't look at the current world records, it's not worth doing right away. Instead, get used to everything, how the game works. Like, try to break down the game a little bit more than maybe you think how it works. Figuring out like, oh, if I attack a boss at this point, all of a sudden this happens. Or maybe if I stand at this pixel, all of a sudden this other enemy decides to jump over me instead of trying to run towards me. And the more you start to just take your time with each game, you slowly start to learn things about it that you never knew before. And those are the kind of things that you will be able to eventually start putting into speedruns. Play through the game, see how well you do, and then play it right afterwards. That's what I highly recommend, is play through it, and then play it right away again. And you'll be amazed at just how much better you end up doing it right after doing that. Then slowly start to time yourself, implement new level strategies, implement new boss strategies as you're trying to figure out how each thing is going to end up working and trying to slowly bring your own personal time down. Once you have it at a level that you think that's pretty good, that's when you may want to start looking at whatever the current world record is. Maybe you're one of those obscure games like me with 8 Eyes. When I first set the record, there was no other speedruns out there. So there was no strategies or crazy glitches or anything like that out there. I had nothing to go on. I created my own kind of like way through the game and my own strategies. But for a lot of games, there are speedruns now as more people are doing it. But don't do that right away. So after you kind of get used to it, then boot up that speedrun and look at it, watch it, and pick out specific parts that you like about it that you think are interesting to try to implement yourself, whether it be a ball strategy, whether it be a glitch, whether it be whatever it may be with a particular level while you're playing through, and then start to practice that moment. Then, after you kind of go back into the game, master that particular part, then add the next part. You don't want to do it all at once because you're just going to end up getting overloaded and get frustrated that you can't pull off all these amazing strategies or all these amazing glitches or whatever all in one go. It takes time and a lot of dedication to start to get better at each game. But if you try to do those things and you don't necessarily like maybe glitches or you don't like certain elements, you can still speedrun. That's what's fun about it. You don't have to have the perfect run of it. Go for your own personal best. If you don't want to see like an Ocarina of Time trying to glitch instantly in Ganon's tower, just play through it normally, the way you expect to play through. Beat every dungeon. Beat every boss. There's a lot of ways that you can approach each of these runs that may not be the way most people end up approaching a run. You can create your own categories, and that's what's also really fun about speedrunning. The more and more that I've done it, as I've slowed down a little bit with speedrunning over the last couple of years, just because I'm busy and all that, but I still have to do it in my personal time. I don't even have to stream it now that enjoy speedrunning. I have started and picked games that no one in their right mind should be speedrunning. The likes of Itchy and Scratchy the game, the Simpsons game. The game is awful. Anyone's ever played it, it's absolutely terrible. I've gone back and I was like, wow, I set the world record for Barney's hide and seek 100%. Now 8 other people have set the record and beaten my time in it. This is absolutely insane. And I started watching their runs and like, why am I watching this run of Barney and actually intrigued on how did they get that kid to spawn at that point, or that bear to spawn so they could hug it, or whatever it may be. Come up with these weird things to speedrun, and then I'm doing it in my own time. And I'm still loving it. I kind of have been rebuilding my love for speedrunning because I kind of got burned out a little bit. I did this panel last year, and at that point I was already starting to get a little bit burned out and really hardcore going after my world record in 8 Eyes, and that can end up happening. And when you do end up getting a little bit burnt out, maybe it's time to switch up the game or try a different category or try something completely different with it, and this is also perfectly cool. If you're interested in just getting into speedrunning, the things that I recommend as far as equipment is you don't need a capture device right away because you just want to see if you're going to like it at first. Don't go out and immediately spend hundreds of dollars on expensive equipment to stream it with whatever device you're particularly looking at. Don't buy webcams and microphones and hope that you're going to become the next big, huge Twitch streamer just by booting up whatever game it may be. see if you like it first, and then if you end up liking it, you want to present it to other people. There are a lot of means and a lot of ways to start getting out there as far as like streaming or recording and the like. And you don't have to go full blown and be like, I'm going to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on it. There are cheaper alternatives as far as capture devices go. As far as if you're interested in more retro games, there's a few cheaper alternatives. There's a Japanese capture device that's the IO Data USB 2. It's a very good capture device that you can get relatively cheap. You do have to import it from Japan, but it's cheap, and it works one-for-one with your PC. So you can plug it in. Whatever's on your TV, you're also immediately getting on your monitor on your computer. So whatever your input's on, there's no lag between that and the television. With a lot of modern capture devices, they're going to get that to LED. So that's a little bit of something that you can go ahead and start doing. And once you do get like your little bit of equipment and you want to start timing yourself, there's plenty of timers out there with great ways to split the times up. As far as being able to like, set it up when you're doing your timer, you want to split up in stages, so you want to see how quick you're doing. I still use the very old W split. It's a very old time splitting program. There's a lot of other ones that you can customize and add pictures to it, and all that kind of crazy stuff to make it a little bit more festive as far as your times and your splits end up going. And from that point on, that's when you have to decide, what kind of speedrun do you want to do? Do you want to do the any percent speedrun? Do you want to do the 100% speedrun? Or do you want to come up with something completely different and original? There are so many ways and categories with speedrunning, such as the likes of Animal Crossing, doing 100%, paying off all the debts for all 4 houses in a single run. It takes like 30-some hours in order to pull something like that off. It's insane. But people have actually done that and have actually set the world record in something like that. Well, you can do something very minor. Just see how fast you're able to beat something like the first dungeon in The Legend of Zelda 1. Just time that and put that up as a category. There's no rhyme or reason or exact science to what kind of speedrun that you're going to go after. You can create anything you want. Now, there may be some elitists out there who are like, well, that's not necessarily this category, but you go on something like Legend of Zelda speedruns just by itself, you will find a breakdown for every single type of run you can ever imagine. Such as getting like all the bottles, or getting 100% items, or beating all the dungeons, or skipping all the dungeons, or backwards walking even. Like, there's all kinds of weird things that you can end up doing and actually have that as your, your speedrun time. Another thing that you have to take into consideration is your system that you're playing on. While it's becoming less frowned upon, stuff like emulators are still a very shaky subject as far as getting ROMs, getting emulators, and using those to actually, play through the game. Some sites and some categories still kind of allow that sort of thing. It's by kind of basically a game per game basis. But at the same time, if you're unable to get a hold of the games itself, you also have to look at things like the virtual consoles. So if you're something like a Nintendo game or Wii U, the virtual console is available. Some games get re-released on other systems, like modern systems, even like PS4 and such. And you have to, when you're deciding to go into that, you do have to do a tiny bit of research to see if that's allowed for which category you may be going after. Because the way emulation works, sometimes the game may run faster through an emulation, or it may run a little bit slower. There's also, of course, NTSC, which is North American, or there's PAL territories, where everything runs at a different frame rate. So your run may be a little bit faster or slower, depending on what game you're going to end up going after. And you have to make sure that whatever you're going after, that you're going to be compatible with it. Speedrun.com has become kind of the home of speedruns as the last few years have grown. They do a great job of being able to kind of break down each game that's on there. Not every game is included, unfortunately, but a lot of games are included. You can break down which category you're looking for, and it'll tell you how it was done. Was it done through an emulator? Was it done through the Wii U Virtual Console? Was it the American version or the Japanese version? A lot of things, if you've ever watched speedruns or speedrunners on Twitch or wherever, you may notice a lot of them do the Japanese versions of games. and if for some reason we didn't know why that was the case, it's because a lot of Japanese games, because of course the characters in the Japanese language end up saying a lot more in just a few characters than we say in sentences sometimes. So because of that, there's less text for you to skip through and be able to get to whatever the next part of that game is. Another thing you have to be a little bit cautious about is, and it's something I ran into personally, is I started running Game Boy games. And I decided I had a Super Game Boy rolling around, which works for Super Nintendo, and I didn't realize at first that the game actually runs a little bit faster through the Super Game Boy than it would traditionally in your handheld Game Boy or later on like with the GameCube Game Boy adapter. So that's another thing you would have to factor in. You're still allowed to use it, but the timing ends up being a little bit different. I set a record in a game for Who Framed Roger Rabbit for the Game Boy, and afterwards I was like, I set my time as what I thought it was, and I found, oh no, it was actually a little bit longer because a little bit of a speed up, which was perfectly cool. It's still world record, so I was like, that's awesome, but that's one thing to also keep in mind. Another thing that also can be a part of speedrunning is not only the system you're using, but the controller that you're using. I don't know if there's a ton of speedrunners out there that have like, if you can use certain controllers or not, because of course with like the Wii or Wii U or whatever it may be, there's a few different varieties of the controller. Some of them don't mind, you can use any controller you want. Some people have created special categories, so you could decide to, what's the speedrun with using the Wii mode, or what's the speedrun using the GameCube controller, or even crazier going to like, the Donkey Konga drums, or a DDR mat, or the Onimusha sword and chainsaw controller on the PlayStation 2. I'm wondering if actually, I wonder if anyone had actually gone after like Resident Evil 4's chainsaw controller speedrun, because that would just be crazy to actually attempt. That controller is really bad if you've never actually used it. But all those things can factor into what is going to make your speedrun what it is, what kind of game it is, and the way that you're going to end up executing that run to improve it and get the time that eventually you want down the road. Another thing that a lot of speedrunners, of course, have done is with streaming. Twitch and YouTube allow for streaming. There's a few other alternatives as well. And it's something that you don't have to do, of course. You don't, like I said, at first you want to just play it for fun and decide what you want to do with it. But if you do want to get into Twitch and streaming, a few recommended things, just from my personal experience being on Twitch for as long as I have, is whatever game you decide to speedrun, don't fear that it's not one of the big ones so that you're not going to get any kind of audience. You play one game enough and become known for that game, you will gain some kind of audience. Are you going to be the next big Twitch star? Probably not. Who knows? You never know, actually. But at the same time, you can gain that audience. And one thing that I love doing with my audience on my Twitch stream is with particular runs, we get points in the run or whatever it may be that we everyone gets involved with. Your chat becomes involved, whether it be like making a certain jump or being able to defeat a certain boss. And every time you're able to succeed with that, even if the run ends up being a failure, succeeding in that moment brings up that, the audience and they get involved, and that will start to engage people, and slowly but surely, the more you're speedrunning that same game, the better you're getting at it, the more you start to engage a little bit of your audience, you will see a huge growth as far as your Twitch streaming is concerned or whatever it may be. But that's another kind of out there thing you don't have to go after necessarily if you don't want to. And then there's the ultimate, I guess, for some people out there is, of course, setting a world record itself in like a major game, and then eventually we'll be getting on something like an AGDQ or Summer Games and Quick or whatever. And there's a lot of factors that, of course, go into that. Of course, there's going to be some politics and stuff like that. I've had some problems with AGDQ personally myself. Choices and runs sometimes. But at the same time, it's really fun to be able to still submit a lot of runs to there. So it's something that I would not say, like, if you don't think your game's going to be popular enough or that your run in particular is, whatever category it may be, isn't the best, I'd say you still want to go ahead and submit it if you have the ability to do so. Send those things out there if you want to get on something like AGDQ, send those little things out there, because you never know which could end up catching the eye of someone, or you may find other people out there. Look for other people maybe speedrunning the game or maybe interested in the game, and try to even cultivate a community for that game. There are plenty of games that had no one speedrunning it ever before, and then one person starts speedrunning it, someone else sees it, and then all of a sudden they jump in and start speedrunning it. A lot of games that I set world records in didn't have times before I started. Something like Lester the Unlikely, an absolutely awful Super Nintendo game. I was one of the first people to actually sit down and try to strategize a run and get a decent time in it. And then all of a sudden, now there's a big community. In fact, we even tried to organize a race for Leicester at last year's AGDQ because there was just so many people that were actually speedrunning a game that's so awful like Leicester. But when you start speedrunning it, you start to learn little things about the game that actually make it more interesting than what it seems to be for like the common eye. Like there's little nuances about the game that actually makes it fun, and you realize that something like Less Than the Unlikely, while it's still pretty much an awful game, it actually can be fun when you get things to work and work differently than maybe the game intended. Making that extra little bit of a leap and making that little bit of a jump and somehow being able to get the game to work the way you wanted to. Like, oh, all of a sudden if I jump really at this last pixel, I hit the edge of the screen and it warps me to that next level without me taking fall damage from whatever it may end up being. So even if you don't think a run may be successful or not going to be popular, doesn't mean that you shouldn't go after it. That is one of the other things when it comes to speedrunning that I recommend. As we're actually at the end of this wonderful mighty final fight.
We will also do the Q&A at the
Yeah, I figured there
will be someone in participation.
Yeah, in case you're wondering if you have any questions or anything, and feel free when we get to that point, ask whatever you want to ask, because I've pretty much seen it all as far as YouTubing and speedrunning goes. So anything you want to ask, of course. What? And then some, yes, exactly. So I guess partly in conclusion to this main part of everything, like I said, when it comes to speedrunning and getting into it, first and foremost, the games that you know, the games that you like, before branching into something that is unknown territory. Like I said, I picked 8 Eyes first as my first run. No one had done it, and that's what made me fall in love with it. My second game that I ended up picking up was a game I never played before prior, probably shouldn't have, and that was Wally Bear and No Game. Another really awful game about not using drugs. You play as a bear that skateboards on the NES. It's absolutely terrible. I don't recommend playing it, but that's what speedrunning opened up that door and opened up that gate, and I just started diving down into the rabbit hole of speedrunning and finding crazy games to be like, oh, does that have a run? Or does that have a run? Maybe I can learn that one. And then you start to learn why some games don't have speed runs for them, because you find out just how absolutely awful they are. Never do Back to the Future 2 and 3 on the NES. It's one you don't ever want to attempt to do. Smurfs is pretty bad too. Actually, Smurfs is a good point. Another thing that if you're interested in NES speed runs or any of the older consoles with PAL territory, a lot of the systems, like for example, if you wanted to import a PAL territory NES title and put it on the top loader, it may read, but sometimes there's some unexpected glitches that end up occurring. Like for example, I played Smurfs on my top loader, my North American top loader, and all of a sudden I would get to the end of the game, one level would be completely glitched out, and the final boss of Gargamel was just a pixeled mess. I was still able to beat the game, still finish it, and still got the world record in the game, but it does run a little bit faster and has a little bit of problems, so that's another thing you have to worry about. As far like North America and Japan, everything works the same, but there are just a little bit of European exclusive titles, or maybe only appeared in English in Europe, such as your Terra Enigma for the Super Nintendo. That's a game that was great, but only released in Europe in English, and North America never unfortunately got it. So if you're going to do that, there's a lot of other complications that may come into it as far as the PAL territories and the like. And another thing that you shouldn't frown upon is maybe if you can find a friend that likes speedrunning or likes games, get them involved. Even if they're not going to be a regular for you, just pick one game that you maybe played as kids together, or a game that you thought was fun as a two-player. You can speedrun co-op, you can speedrun with as many players that are possible to play the game. I'm sure even relay races where you can switch off. You can create categories like that. You switch off between levels to see whoever ends up getting, every level we switch off. Or just classic co-op games that end up being a really big amount of fun to play, like your bubble bobbles and stuff like that, where you can really kind of come up with strategies for which each of you and your friend can do at the same time and end up working towards that eventual goal. I've run Ren and Stimpy, Turtles in Time. I have a world record in a game called Pirates of Darkwater, which is an absolutely awful beat 'em up for the Super Nintendo. And it's really, really slow and bad, but anyway, that's another one. I have a record in a Sailor Moon game on the the Super Famicom with a friend of mine that we mastered to the point that we were able to lock and stun all the bosses that never even got a chance to move, which is another part that I never knew you could even do, but playing it co-op and speedrunning it and doing it over and over again, we found those little things and minor stuff that actually ended up making it even more fun to get involved with in speedrunning. So, I think that's most of my introduction here with speedrunning. I hope that was a little bit of somewhat interesting, at least. Do we have any questions from anybody? Speedrunning related, Twitch streaming, YouTubing? Of course. I'm not sure if it's on. Do we have a mic for that one?
I can do that pretty good.
Oh yeah, if you want to just talk to it,
Yeah.
I can hear it. It's not loud, thankfully.
Anyway, my name is Jason Brown. I'm a streamer on Twitch.
Awesome.
Currently holding 4th in the world for the fastest Terminator Sega Genesis.
Awesome.
In a game like Terminator, enemy placement is pretty much solely owned by RNG. In games like that, how do you find ways to manipulate that?
There's certain games that I've done certain speedruns where RNG was a big, huge part of it. One thing that I do in practice is do stuff like emulation and save states, and just at each individual interval, I save state for whichever enemy's coming up. And then I walk into a long way, reload, and then see if maybe jumping in is a different thing. And then making sure, it's kind of like testing a theory. Keep doing it until you're sure that this is the way it works. Like a game, when I was doing 8 Eyes, I thought it was RNG involved.
Yeah.
And then slowly I learned that it's actually the placement of the character towards an enemy that ended up causing it to attack or not. So I learned that I could jump towards certain enemies and I could get them to spawn and attack when I wanted them to, instead of just being kind of a free-for-all when I got close. Every game's going to be a little bit different, of course, the way it's programmed. Sometimes even walking in by holding a different button on the D-pad can sometimes cause enemies to do things that you didn't expect them to do. So I would recommend, if possible, boot it up in an emulator, get to the part that you're trying to test out, and just kind of save and reload until they kind of get it. And there's sometimes where, unfortunately, there is no way to manipulate quite the way you want. There's a couple games where I just had it dumb luck that I was able to get the way I wanted it, and other times where it's like, oh, my run's ruined, even though it was perfect up to this point. That enemy jumped at me, unfortunately, and that was the end.
Since I don't see anyone else, can I say?
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
How long have you been streaming and are you partnered?
I'm not partnered, unfortunately. I've been on YouTube for going on my 10th year, but on YouTube I do retro walkthrough videos where I try to help people get through retro games that aren't quite speedruns, though I've actually gotten contacted about a few of them being potential speedruns, like Bay's Kids. Apparently no one wants to play that game. Can't imagine why. No, I can't imagine why. But anyway, on Twitch I've been doing it for 3 years, and I've gained a bit of an audience. I have my regulars and such, but I haven't quite broken that mold yet. I have submitted for partner a few times. Unfortunately, they just kind of turn you down the same generic email over and over and over again to the point that you're like, okay, I'm good. Right now, I kind of was like, you know what, I'll wait a while, wait till my numbers grow, and then I'll try again. But I didn't let it break me. I decided to, instead of like forcing myself to do things that maybe I wasn't as much interested in, or trying to be like, everyone needs to follow, or everyone needs to do this, I actually kind of took a step back, and then went back and went, I'm going to play what I want to play. And if people want to be here, that is amazing and awesome. And if they don't want to be here, that's also perfectly cool. And I ended up, I kind of this was about a year ago, I kind of got burned out from streaming and speedrunning. And then when I did that, I kind of came back and was like, I'm loving it again. Now I'm loving it even more than I had before.
That's essentially what I did.
Yeah.
Speedrunning Terminator all the time.
Yeah.
I'll play what I want. I'm also a competitive fighting game player.
Awesome.
Online gaming, so when you come on, play what you like to do.
There you go.
But yeah, thank you very much. And
Of course.
mind if I give you my card?
Of course.
Thank you.
Is there any other
I
questions?
got one for you, Mark. I can't believe I've never asked you this before. All right, so in terms of a speed run 100%.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a game. All right, let's take a game like Mega Man X. You, unless you look it up beforehand, nobody knew about the Hadouken.
Yeah.
Would that, like small things like that, extras in the game, would that have to be acquired to be considered a true 100% run?
That every game's gonna be on. Okay, the question was, does like in Mega Man X stuff like getting the Hadoken, does that count towards 100%? And every category is going to be different with games. Unfortunately, I don't speedrun Mega Man X, so I don't know if that's part of the true 100% speedrun.
Well, it's season it.
Yeah, but basically everyone's going to be broken down as to some of them will be 100%, but not including this. Some will be 100% and including that. Because the Hadoken is one of those things like that Mega Man X, if you're unfamiliar, you get everything and then kill yourself a few times or have to go back to the very end, armor Armadillo's level and hope that it ends up getting like 4 or 5 times. You have to die and respawn it. So every time you do it, like it's different. It depends on basically per game. And also, if you're the first person to do it, then you can kind of decide also which one ends up counting towards that true 100%. But yeah, it's pretty much a game by game basis. And usually the categories are, for example, on speedrun.com, it's defined down there. Where you usually click on 100%, you can kind of get a base rules or base introduction, whatever it may be. And a lot of speedruns become more popular, they even have their own wikis, like a Wikipedia type thing. You can go there and get every little breakdown of the game, and every glitch in particular has its own page. And you know, strategies have their own page, so you can kind of learn from the masters and get the, like, a lot of them have links to YouTube with specific videos just for teaching how to do whatever it may be in particular games.
Did you talk about the Wolverine fourth floor also?
Oh, well, that was like,
find stuff.
well, that's another thing, yeah. With speedrunning, when I was doing the game Wolverine by LJN, beautiful, beautiful game. But yeah, when I first started speedrunning, I set a time in it by beating every level and getting through the entire game. And then somebody in my chat randomly said, "Did you know there's a warp in this game?" I'm like, no. And I even searched on GameFAQs. I immediately went to like GameFAQs and other things. This was a few years ago. There was nothing on it. I went to the forums on GameFAQs and found like one topic from like 7 years ago that mentioned the warp. There was like one little thing that mentioned it. And that opened up a whole new category for Wolverine. So at this point, I've actually been able to set the record for not only beating every single level, but I'm also using the warps to skip a good portion of the game and get a pretty good time in it. The speedrun that was just on, oh, this is a good one. Showing that you can speedrun anything. This is Doug's Big Game for the Game Boy Color. It's about a 4-minute speedrun overall, and it requires a lot of RNG in order to actually get it to work and all that stuff. But yeah. But at the same time, before this was also Captain Novolin, which was a diabetic superhero game that I speedran as well. And I actually recently found somebody else who speedran it and had a time submitted for it, and my time wasn't listed. It was one of those ones I had done years ago. Thought no one even knew, like obviously no one knew that I did a speedrun for it. Saw that and was like, oh, I actually do have a speedrun for that. That's a little bit faster. I guess I do have a world record in that game. It was one of those ones that I didn't think I actually had. So that's also with your times. If you decide to go after a game that no one's playing or you can't find anything on, make sure you save the speedrun, keep it, because you never know. There may be other people that go after that record down the road and be like, well, maybe I've already done that, or I've gotten a little bit better, and grow that community, whatever game it ends up being. Like I said, 8 Eyes is one that had no one playing it until I did it, and then I ended up starting a friendly rivalry with a guy, and we went back and forth 7 times in the span of like 2 years, going after one game that no one else in the world cared about. And it doesn't matter to anybody else, but it was the coolest feeling to go. And the last time I got the record back, it was like 3 or 4 months of like almost every day playing it. And I finally was able to like break that world record again and take the time back. It was like, but no one else, it didn't matter. But to me, that was like a personal, like awesome achievement. So that's something you can also do with like speedrunning.
So you guys shaved off like 10 minutes between the initial world record?
No, it's about 6 or 7 from like when I set the world record the first time and whatever, the time that it is now. Any other questions?
Is there a favorite glitch that you found when you were playing the game?
I actually have, sorry.
Sorry, just that you might have been the first one to find it.
I may be, especially when it comes to AIs, it wouldn't be a favorite glitch. I could also have like an unfavorite glitch. Something that I discovered as I was playing the game. I had never seen anything before about it, but I discovered that if you grabbed an item at the right moment and got hit at the same time, the item would negate. So I would get like the invincibility potion and get hit at the same time, and I would end up having to ruin my run because I ended up having that happen. I also learned that at certain times I could actually get my character to completely freeze, and the game would be stuck, and that's something I had never discovered before. Unfortunately, I don't know if I've actually discovered too many really amazing beneficial glitches that ended up happening to me, other than just like, some dumb luck here and there. I've experimented with a lot of glitches that are out there, and like the really popular ones, and tried to learn it. Like I've been learning slowly over the years how to do Ocarina of Time just in my spare time, learning like reverse bottle and learning infinite sword glitch and those kind of things. Which has added a whole different level to playing through like Ocarina and messing with the game and getting the things that you shouldn't be able to get to earlier. Of course, the back and stair jump is something like Super Mario 64, where you run up the stairs and instantly get to Bowser or whatever it may end up being. So there's a lot of glitches out there that end up being cool and all. I can't think of anyone in particular that I ended up finding myself, or like from the master, I guess. Yeah. Any other questions?
I got one for you personally.
Personally,
Oh, yeah.
is this a challenge?
Sort of. So, those of us that watch you, we know you in trophy hunt.
Yes, I do
You're
trophy.
you're one of the best. So, have you ever thought of speedrunning
Trophy hunting?
to trophy hunt to platinum?
Yeah. That's another thing with speedrunning that you could do, and actually I've seen some people do, where you start up a game and see how quick you're able to get a platinum trophy or get 1,000 achievements, and you're doing 360 or maybe getting all the achievements on your Steam, whatever it may be. That can also be its own category in itself. There's a game that recently has become part of the trophy hunting community that's really awful, but really easy, called Nubla. And the game takes like 40 minutes to beat to get a platinum trophy, and it's terrible that you can do that. But personally, my last time I did it, I speed ran the game to get the platinum. I have 3 platinums in the same game because of regions and all this stuff. Trophies can be a bit weird when you can get like multiple for the same one and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I speed run. I didn't submit it or anything. I have that time saved. I've also known some people doing it for Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball 3. Some people have been working on trying to get a platinum. That would take so many hours of grinding in that game that I can't imagine anyone doing it. But yeah, no, that's another thing you can do with modern games, especially. You can definitely make categories based on that. Any other questions? Yeah.
Get closer.
That's cool.
All right. So for new people getting into speedrunning,
Yeah.
what would you recommend in your game? The game they play, like they have a route. How would they start routing it?
The way you start routing it, when I started new games, there's a lot of games that, the question was how do you start speedrunning? So I'm not saying the question is repeat. But basically, when a lot of games, since I was the first one to at least I could tell speedrun it, I kind of had to make up my own strategies and routes and stuff like that. And I would basically play through the game one way and see what my time was. And then I noticed while playing, a lot of times when you're playing it, you may notice that maybe a boss strategy or trying different mechanics out for each boss or each level or whatever it may be. And then you experiment maybe the next run, trying that other idea with the boss, and just, you can see your own time. Because in your head, you may say, well, that may be a little bit faster. But then when you factor out the time, oh wait, it was about the same time. I didn't end up gaining anything from that. And that's how I kind of started doing this, piecing together like what worked and what didn't. And then do a run where I would experiment with something in particular, maybe just one level, and tying that one level, trying that new strategy out, and seeing if my time improved. And if it did, that would become a new part of whatever game I was working on. Like for 8 Eyes, I would go through and figure out, well, if I jumped at enemies instead of, like at this one level, instead of just walking into them, I ended up saving myself like 5 to 6 seconds at the end of the level, which in a speed run, any kind of second is a major improvement. And that's something I wouldn't have discovered if I hadn't just started like doing things a little bit outside the box as far as I was normally doing with the game. So yeah, it's kind of like you just piece together things. The more and more you play it, you can even think you have everything down packed, you have a perfect run of stuff, and then all of a sudden something clicks, or you discover something out of the blue, like, oh, that works on that? I had no idea that actually worked. And then all of a sudden your run is completely different, and now you have a brand new time in it. So even games that I've played hundreds of times for speedruns, I'm still discovering new stuff in them. So your route will change as time goes. But yeah, initially, just kind of keep playing through it or practice certain levels in particular, and try to do crazy things. Things that may not work. They may not work. You have to reset and try it over again. But when you get those ones that work, it's awesome. You're like, wow, that's a new thing, and you end up getting a brand new time based on it.
Not to bring up 8 Eyes, but the fact that you guys keep going back and forth. Does it also bring the fact that when you're building something, if they actually have a world record video already up, it helps to watch that video too? Because when he was doing 8 Eyes, him and him,
Feasel.
Feasel.
Feasel's a very popular speedrunner.
When they go back and forth, Mark would find something, and then you'd go watch Fusel's next little video, he did the same thing Mark did, but Mark would just see the Fusel's video and go, oh, I didn't realize you did that as well.
Yeah, we actually had not arguments, we had a little bit of problems. He'd be like, I discovered that strategy. And I'd be like, no, I'm the one who first did that strategy. And then we would decide, we would basically take elements of each other's runs until eventually we got to the run that we have now, which is what is currently still mine. He's moved on to other games. I'm ready though at any moment. As soon as he comes back into 8 Eyes and decides to take my world record back, that's one game I will defend. Games like Barney's Hide and Seek or Itchy and Scratchy and a few other ones, I'm not gonna necessarily go after again. Like, oh, you got that record in that game? Congratulations, that's good for you. Because I don't want anything to do with it. But something like 8 Eyes is one that I will go back after. But yeah, like something like when you're competing with somebody, each one, like when you discover that new little thing to beat the next person, it's kind of fun. They're like, oh, now I got it. And then they implement it and they're running and they beat you back and then you got to come up with something new or they come up with something new. And that's part of fun. I don't think that, you don't want to get bent out of shape with someone great each time. You want to use that as motivation and then go back in, create new strategies and attempt to take back that record, take back that time. And sometimes you get to the point where you're just unable to do it. You just, like bow your head to them and be like, awesome, and I'm going to move on to whatever I'm going to move on to. And you're going to move on, and that's it. But you don't want to get, people get overly competitive with everything. With speedrunning with me, I get competitive with myself, but I'm not, getting overly competitive. If someone takes my records, unless it's done on, some fraudulent means or something like that, I'm not really too bad on shit over it. Yeah.
Just going back to what I was just saying, I was the Monster World Runner that was here last year.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. How's that been going for you?
Well, actually, somebody picked that up for the 12-hour challenge, and that just went on Twitch, and it was like, oh, somebody's playing Monster World.
If you're unfamiliar with it, the 12-hour challenge is when you pick a game that you've never speedrun before, and your goal within the 12 hours is to do a speedrun and see how good you can do within that 12 hours. You just play that game non-stop for 12 hours. It's just a fun thing speedrunners end up doing. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but so I saw on Twitch, and I was like, I started watching, and I was like, these are all of my strengths.
Yeah.
Every single thing. And then he finished the challenge and did a run, and then I watched it, and I was probably on 5 different things I picked out of it to improve my own run.
There you go. So you're able to already have that foundation for everything that you were already doing yourself, and then a few new things that he was able to discover, and then you're able to get a better time than you had. So that's awesome. Congrats on that. Any other questions?
Sure. Do you have any plans to actually go for Super Mario World since, I know you as a good friend, but that's one of your big games that you can run things.
It's a personal favorite of mine, is Super Mario World. If I went after it, I wouldn't be doing one of the crazy, really insane glitches. I don't think people maybe have seen that people can now beat Super Mario World without beating a single level. They just instantly work from the very first stage to the end of the game by using a very convoluted method of reprogramming the game, basically, in order to do so. But if I went after something like Super Mario World, it'd be something like the 96 gates, or going after the basic run, which I think is 11. I want to say it's 11 gates is the normal, go right to Star Road and right to Bowser and that. So that'd be something I would go after. I've done it a little bit, I have some PDs, but nothing that was mastering every little thing about it. Which is also fun, personal bests are just as good to me a lot of times, sometimes the world record, especially with the big game titles. I'm happy to be a certain rank on certain games because they're super speedrun. You go on some games and they have 150 records have been set for one particular game. It's cool just to see how far I'm able to place. Some games I start speedrunning and I'm my goal isn't to be number 1, it's to be in the top 5 in something. And that's what I set myself to, and then I work towards that. And then if I'm able to get in the top 5, then start working towards getting in the top 4, top 3, or whatever, or decide to move on to something else, whatever it may be. So there's plenty of things with speedrun that can bring you that rush of adrenaline of setting a time. It's not just setting the world record.
And do you have any intention of trying to take back Wand of Gamelon now that 2 years later it actually has a pretty big problem?
It's amazing. Wand of Gamelon, which if you're unfamiliar with it, is a Legend of Zelda game that the Philips CDI is an absolutely god-awful game, not sponsored by Nintendo at all. They just got the rights to use the characters and made a game out of it. 3 Zelda games, in fact. I actually made a joke years ago, just a long time ago, where it's I want a world record in Zelda. A Zelda. Just one. And I decided to go after Wand of Gamelon from the CDI because no one else had done it. And I set the time in it, and it's now way better. The world record for it is 10 minutes less than what my time was. But at that point, there's a lot of strategies that I didn't even know, like what items you could skip. I discovered a lot while speedrunning it, but there was still a lot of stuff that I had no idea how it worked. And the game's a glitchy mess as it is. The only reason that you have to worry about is actually a good point, is if you're doing stuff that is CD-based, you want to make sure that you're using a competent console. You don't want your laser running out. Because my CDI is because they're not well made at all. The lasers go out very quickly. So unfortunately, there's a lot of times where it's longer loading than it should, and that's equaling towards my overall time. So that's one reason I haven't gone back after like something like Blondie Amblon, is because of laser in it. And replacing the laser in a CDI or getting a new CDI isn't like the cheapest thing out there, so that's one of the things. So that is another thing you want to watch out for, is making sure that your equipment fully works. Consoles, like with cartridges and stuff, they'll be good, but any CD-based console, you want to make sure that's working in good order. Classic PlayStation 1s go up very easily. I remember back then, I had like turn my PlayStation on its side sometimes in order to get the disc to read, so that's another thing you want to make sure you have good working stuff. Any other questions? Comments? Oh, cool.
So, say somebody goes to look for a game on speedrun.com
Yeah.
and it's not there, where else should they look?
You want to look at YouTube, first off, that's your first go-to. Speed Demos Archive. If it's not on speedrun.com, it's probably not going to be on Speed Demos Archive, but you never know. But yeah, I would definitely go to YouTube first, and then you also on Twitch, you can search for specific games. So go to Twitch and search for that game, and you can find the archive videos. Because if anyone set a time in it, they're probably going to have their video saved. So I would go to those. In fact, that's what we used to have to do, because speedrun.com has only recently become like the home and hub for speedrunning. For many years, we kind of had like so many websites that we were posting times to. There was actually, there'd be times where I'd set a time and be like, and somebody'd be like, oh yeah, actually you're like third, like this other guy has this one. I looked on YouTube, I didn't find, oh yeah, he posted it on this other obscure thing. Like, so you do have to do a little bit of digging still, but it's thankfully a lot better than it used to be. So you're getting into speedrunning now, thankfully, like something like speedrun.com is a good site and has most of them. Like I said, Captain Nolan was my second time in, but was just recently added to speedrun.com. And there's actually several games that I don't have on there right now that I have a record in. Just because to get it on speedrun.com, if it's a game that doesn't have a time already, you have to kind of like go on the forums and basically become the moderator for that game, because you're the only one submitting the time at that point. So you basically become like the head of whatever speedrun that is. So, but yeah, no, I would definitely use YouTube, Twitch, Speed Demos Archive, and then if none of that works, just search it in Google. See if anything comes up, because there may be a chance that it pulls up some obscure website. So the hardest ones to find are anything that's very like Japanese, because there's a lot of Japanese speedrunners that do something like Nico Video or whatever it's called, but it's basically Japanese YouTube, and they post their runs on that. So if you're doing something like really out there, like Japanese related, like your Dragon Quest, Japanese Dragon Quest and stuff like that, you may have to go a little bit more digging to find a time, but for the most part, you should be able to find it on the websites. Any other questions?
A new game and you're going to submit for the world record, when do you get to the point where you think that's good enough for me to submit, or do you spend more time? I can do a little better before I submit it.
Usually I know, the question was when you're setting a time for the first time, like when you know you have a record, if there's no other record available, how do you know your time's good enough? You could technically submit it right away if you want and you're confident, but I usually have a good idea if I think the run. Like if I'm playing through it and I make a bunch of mistakes, clear mistakes, maybe missed jumps, fell, had to backtrack a bunch, then I obviously know that I need some more work put into it. But if you really truly think that you have everything put into it and it's actually a really well-made run, then yeah, go ahead and claim it. There's a couple of times where I've gotten a time like, well, that's a new world record. I'm like, I'm not happy with it yet, so let's hold off on celebrating world record. Let me keep going back at it and end up coming up with whatever it may be. Any other questions?
Okay, so this is a bit more personal.
Yeah.
In the last few years, what record do you think has been one of the most phenomenal to watch and record?
Easily, the question is what's the most phenomenal speedrun to watch as far as in the last few years? The speedrunning, like I said, has gotten so big lately. The Zeldas are my personal favorite. Ocarina of Time has become insane. Like the amount, like before when it was just beating everything, and then they discovered, oh, you can, glitch from Goma's boss lair to Ganon's tower instantly. And then they discovered, but you still need a bottle to do that. And then they were like, well, we still have to go to Kakariko and get the bottle from the Tucker lady and all that stuff. And then they discovered, oh, well, if we manipulate this hitbox and get hit and pick up this Deku nut at the same time and then do this, all of a sudden we turn that Deku nut into a bottle inside of the Deku tree itself. And now they can just use, that's how they get their bottle that can then be used for the wrong orbit and then taking them all the way to the game's tower. So they don't have to leave anything other than they go right from the beginning of the game, Deku tree, and then right again and already beat it. And that's been really crazy to watch. A lot of Legend of Zelda games, because it's such a passionate speedrun community, it can be very intimidating to get involved. So I would say if you're going to like do any of that, like I would personally go after the Zeldas on your own, maybe off your stream or whatever. Just be prepared if you're going to do it on like a live stream and stuff like that. There's so many passionate viewers out there that are going to kind of bombard you with whether it be backseat, we call backseat gaming, and people are telling you kind of what to do. Or they may just be like, well, you're not doing it right, or you may not be doing this right, or whatever it may be. So just be prepared. In the really popular speed runs, you're going to get a little bit of that if you decide to go ahead and you're streaming it and such. But that shouldn't discourage you from attempting whatever game it may be. But yeah, no, the Zelda games are pretty insane. Another person, like, and then a lot of speed runs is also like ones I wouldn't do myself, but I really like watching. I like watching Pokemon speed runs. A lot of like the classic, red, blue, and yellow are really fun to watch, like the non-glitch versions, where they basically go through the entire game with one Pokemon. And stuff like Grand Theft Auto is really fun for me to watch, but because there's some really, especially with the PC versions and the like 3 Vice City and San Andreas, there's some really crazy rewind replay glitching where they basically hit a replay and it successfully completes missions and stuff. Really insane stuff to actually watch, but it's stuff that I wouldn't do myself. I like watching other people do, and then I do my own games with my own speed runs. Any other questions?
Another personal one. All right, so
No personal notes here.
I know you're not the biggest on FPS like Call of Duty and stuff.
Yeah, well,
But
there's worse. There's worse out there.
with when Advanced Warfare came out, the race came out, the race to 10th prestige. Do you think that is the future of speedrunning as is?
Someone like that could definitely be part of someone wanted to do it all in one go. Because that's one thing with speedrunning, usually it has to be done in one go. It's like how long can you sit there and do something like that? Just speaking of really long speedruns in general, like keeping the game up, there's one for a GameCube RPG where you have to keep an item in your inventory for like 30 real hours in order to get it to turn into something else, and then you complete the speedrun that way. In fact, one streamer got his stream taken down because he was just sitting there at the screen where he was waiting. He did everything else in the game, just needed that one thing to go. But they said he wasn't playing the game, even though he was technically speedrunning, and he just had to leave his system on. They actually ended up taking it down. So the thing is, if you're willing to sit there and put that much effort and time, and you're willing to like, some people do marathon runs where they combine games into one big speed run. Like doing all, like Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, 100% all in one go. Or doing a series of Mario titles all in one go, so you go right from one game to another. That's another kind of speed run, marathon speed running that you can potentially do. But then again, at the same time, when you start adding more games to it, how long can you possibly stay up for as well? Any RPG. That's the thing also with speedrunning, if you're going to get into long ones, make sure that you you can pick out as you're playing it, like moments you can take those brief moments of rest. Whether it be run through the rest of it real quick, you're mashing text, or a cutscene is unskippable that you're playing, or you can grab a snack real quick. So there are ways to kind of do speedrunning while also having to deal with other regular human things. So that's another thing I'll be Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want the thing at the desk. You don't want to be doing that. Yeah. Well, I think I figured it out. So this is the Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This was the example earlier where I said this actually runs a little bit faster because I ended up using the Super Game Boy, which is actually why I switched for my Game Boy runs to the GameCube one. The Game Boy adapter on the GameCube, because it ends up running the way it's supposed to, like it would on an actual Game Boy. So it was one of those things where I did it, and I'm like, oh, my time is actually a little bit longer than I thought it was because of the way the game ended up running it. But anyway, so thank you all so much for being a part of the panel here for speedrunning. I hope some of it was at least somewhat informative. If you're interested in speedrunning, I'm going to be here all weekend. If you want to ask, come up and say hi or anything like that, and ask a personal question about speedrunning or something you didn't really ask in here, please, of course, be sure to do so. thing to keep in mind is do speedrunning because you enjoy the games and you love them. Don't do it because you want to go for that world record or get that fame and all that. You're going to end up getting burnt out way too quickly, and you're going to find yourself leaving the hobby before you even have potential to get good enough at that game. So that's the main thing to keep in mind. Anyway, I'm Cornshaq. Thank you all for being a part of this. If you're interested, I do have my YouTube channel. It's Cornshaq Gaming. You search on YouTube for Cornshaq Gaming, or I'm on Twitch at twitch.tv/Cornshaq, or tweet at me at Cornshaq. So thank you all so much.